something simple here, I guess, as an accolade to the collective of what we are. It's called Artists My Neck of the Woods, an ode to. They're there, they exist, they're just hard to define. Most times they just blend with all other passers-by. Visualists with mediums laid out flat on planes, with depths of depravities astounding, their texture perverse, almost harsh. Their paint on their palettes is vile and distasteful, makes you just want to gark. The musos, their rhythm and melody is bent and distorted, delivered grotesquely with 3 ink abortions. The sculpture's medium is corroded with rust, it's twisted and torn, bronze oxidised with dust. Digital media, you're there, you've finally made the grey. Critics, or Twitter, no longer to be your bane. YouTube will do it for you, so long as porn don't get in the way. Potters and ceramicists from the wheel, clay is all claggy, biscuit and glaze, ex-kiln sad and saggy. Spoken word poetry is riddled with guilt, laden with grief through bereft angst and defeat. To me, however, they represent certain decorum, and I'll make this statement but once. I mean, just look at me. I'm scruffy, I'm puffy, truth known, be somewhat of a tart. That being said, summed up to put to bed, I wouldn't know my arts from my aspidistras. And straight up to the open mic, first up, and he's always been leading off well, is Derek Fenton, please. Wakey, welcome.
I'm going to read one poem from my hot off the press chapbook, Blind Man of the Lady Crossing. I picked these up on Thursday, and anyone would like a copy, they're only $5. Covers expenses. And the poem I'd like to read is actually a sestina. I'm sure that many of you know that a sestina is somewhat of a mad obsessional type form, and it was invented by a French troubadour mathematician. So there are 7 stanzas. The first 6 are all 6 lines each, and the end word of each line, the first stanza of 6, is repeated in an arcane order all the way down to the 7th stanza, which is only 3 lines. And because it's in this particular mathematical sequence, the last stanza, the same words as the first stanza are then repeated, but 2 to a line. I feel confused. I don't know. Okay. I wrote this one after I'd spoken to a young lady from Zimbabwe, my home country, at one of these poetry readings last year, and she told me how confused and upset and sad and angry she was at her homeland. She had come here when she was only 5 years old, and I've called it, and as most of you probably know, Zimbabwe used to be called Rhodesia in the bad days. I've called it Rhodesian Recriminations, as Estima. She left when she was only 5, too young to be responsible, too young to feel any guilt. The smell of a wooden cooking fire and the black woman who brought her up, carrying her on her back, lingering and taking her back to Zimbabwe before she was 5. It was her white parents who brought her here, being responsible for her ethical traits, which fire her feelings of shame and guilt. Her sensitivity to guilt, inability to look back without a conscience on fire, to times when she was only 5, to feel, to when she felt responsible for all the injustices brought to her beautiful homeland, brought before she could know the guilt, before she felt responsible. Now she wants to take it all back to way, way before she was 5, to stamp out the raging fire, way, way before the guns would fire and young men in coffins be brought home after 1965, before duty had turned to guilt, way, way before looking back, knowing who was responsible for starting the raging fire. If only she could take it back, and her birthplace be brought to a sanity without guilt, without Guardian's gang of 5. Put out the fire, be rid of the guilt, be responsible for good times brought back to way before she was 5.
Thank you, Derek. And next up to the microphone, and they're all going to move the way down, and always with value, would you welcome Zan Ross, please?
Okay. I wrote several poems about rock nest. I don't know why I got obsessed about the text message again. And there's a motel, I think it is. It's called the Quokka Arms. The hotel, this one's called Undercover of the Quokka Arms. The hotel bar, 8 p.m. I'm in black. Suspenders dug in under spandex. Fire engine red lips. Brunette translator for Olympics on the big screen. Bigger than my shot in the back with rockets breasts. Last night there was rack the balls, shoot in the dark, slip a coin down my slot, start me up, set a blaze on the grill, slabs of meat sputtering, any one of which could be mine. I took the choice bits, rare juice running down my chin. Tonight the wind is July, and I'm waiting for Bogart to drop the cue, walk over, say, if you need anything, just whistle. You know how to whistle, don't you? I'll put my lips together and blow. The piece under his jacket. Watch me die a little. I've known this desire for decades. Dissatisfaction in film as too many. Dance. What can I say? This one's another one there. It's called Genuine Facsimiles. Naive batterings of Rottnest Island. Winter rushes the windows of bus, train, hotel, lodge, restaurant. Glacial interpretations intercede, but I'm steamed. Dim sum inside this Chinese coat. Tights whispering as I move. There's no place like home, and I believe it. Red shoes or not. Your body trailing mine, poker hot between ice-white sheets is certainly preferable. Isolated, I've read and read, text passing like hours in chains, galley slaves I promised to review, and liberated of my opinions, they fly like kites. Like all I must consider before I return to mainland trepidation, and a train seal roadshow of minute proportions you managed to deny me. And all the fish ever tossed overboard and discussed, but just watch me balance a ball on my nose, please. To approximate velocity of cordite explosion shell, and if I just sit still, Wajima lighthouse automated candle fractures 1,001 nights extension to your visionary misconstruction. At least that's my version of why I have begged to myself, even left the vibrator at home. But there hasn't been a rumor between us for years why either one of us bothers. I know this isn't what I planned. 7 days of suicidal sessions with pop culture. But I'm chained to alternatives, none of which satisfy like SBS and chocolate. A decade of rhetorical inquiries has assured me the best laid plans, or worse, vicarious, even when I've discovered my flesh is still capable of 8 kilometers, white-billed in flaming return. Who to carry this revelation to? Who would accept the reverse charges? Thank you.
Zan Ross, thank you again. And our next open micer, gentleman that's always good down here at Perth Poetry Club, and he also has flyers here regarding his next book, but if we could just get a little bit of quick poetry from Ron Oakley, please.
all that lovely work on the table. If there's not enough there for you, please see me afterwards. I've got a bag full of them. 16th of May, you're all welcome. But today, the cold in the streets. I knew him well, would often sit and talk in city streets, brushing off the curious looks of passers-by. His tawny hair, his rich, well-cultured Irish brogue, his many, many layered op-shop coats and jumpers. But his smile was infectious. Told me he often walked from the CBD to the Children's Hospital and back again, just to fill in the night. If you sleep in the streets, he said, at night, you're going to move on, Shaft. Wait, you can't sleep here? Of course I can't with you shouting like that. In a way, he would say, it's easier to find the kip out of the way in the day. But Paddy, you've got so much clothes on. If you fell over, you would have trouble getting up. Oh, it's the cold, Ron, the cold. You wouldn't believe the cold in the streets. Under the fig tree, under the fig tree, in the corner of the garden, under the fig tree, a concrete pot, crammed tight with bulbs, forlornly stares at me day after day. Suddenly, as if it could read the calendar, rich red stalks shoot up, brilliant crimson flowers light up that corner. Mothers, hippiastrums. It's as if she is saying, you're not getting any younger, my son. Take some time to plant those bulbs.
Thank you, Ron Oakley, and we're all looking forward to that book launch. Okay, I'm pretty much not au fait with what the circumstances of our feature situation is today. So, but basically, it's in a nutshell, it's the 2009 Tom Collins Poetry Award winners being first and second place. We're not getting readings from all of them, and there's some from highly commended and some from commended. But all I'm going to do now is I'm going to hand over to Mr. Glenn Phillips, and he can introduce them to the microphone. Thank you. Make Glenn welcome.
Yeah, we did another similar reading a little bit earlier on the 1st of April. Unfortunately, the audience didn't seem to know whether or not it was an April joke, but we got through that one, and we're going to get through today, so I think really well. The Tom Collins Poetry Prize was established 35 years ago, and it's $1,000 first prize, and quite reasonable prizes for the other placings in it. The judge for the 2009 prize was Peter Bibby. Peter's here today, and I remember a couple of things he said. One, that he had the longest shortlist he ever had for a competition. And secondly, I remember him saying that the prize winner, who we're going to hear from in just a moment, stood out clearly from all the others and never had any winner. We're going to apologise for 2 or 3 readers who can't be here, but most of the other people who are in the commenders and so on will also read. But first we'll have the winner and the second prize. I think one of the little things we ought to note about the huge number of people who did get listed in this award was that all but one came from Western Australia, which proves the old adage that Western Australian poets, we're all a lot of scheming rhymers in the end. So I'm going to call up our prize winner, whose poem thaumaturge requires a little bit of explanation, but I'm going to get Christopher Conrad to give us that explanation and to read this very, very fine poem to you. Please welcome Chris Conrad.
Yep, I don't know why I won, but you know. There's one and it's all good sometimes. Yeah, nobody will know. Thaumaturge, yeah, it was just a great word. I found it in the dictionary one day, but I really, really liked it. It actually means wonder worker, kind of miracle worker, and the idea of that sort of started to engross me, particularly when it comes to being related to the idea of demiurge. Demiurge is like a sun-god, and there's a lot of thinking around. There was about 2,000 years ago, guys called Gnostics. We thought, yep, there's a god up there who's kind of like playing tricks on us, and they called that god demiurge. So thaumaturge is sort of a play along that. The boy learned his ways along winding paths. He learned his sorcerer ways through bushed up granite, crystal water creeks. He learned his tricks young. Sky and leaf canopy for a canvas, scarp contours as mindscape edge. The boy wrote his myths there amongst the hills. When God was a boy, he learned his winding way of the bush around pushed up granite alongside foraging creeks. He was dead. He was completely convinced. When God was a boy, he wrote his myths, basking on dome-shaped stone. He learned his tricks up there. He wrote his myths about a big dead god playing puppet master to a young man, dancing to a tune he thought was his own, only to find out it was all just a wishful, a dream where he was awake. Out there, he was dead. There was no he. This was when God was a boy. It all seemed so real when he was busy writing his myths. But then he grew up, this God. Took one look at the leftover apple, realising his great mistake, that in fact he was alive, that in fact dreams were just dreams, that it was in dreams he lay dead. This God grew old in his new reality, the harsh, hard, fought-for knowledge of his cold clay, ossified in splendid glory of his great new order, dotting the landscape, perched along the inescapable turn of a river's edge. He overlooked his great creation, the natural world. There was no place for myth here, because for the first time in his 51 million years, he awoke to the reality that he was alive. Convinced of his quotidian self, it became his one anchoring mantra, not his myth, but his creation. God became a man.
Some of you might not be aware of where the name Tom Collins, or the Tom Collins Prize came from. The Fellowship of Australian Writers still occupies its headquarters. But the one house in Australia that was built by a famous poet, or writer, anyway, he wrote poetry, but he mainly is known as a novelist, Joseph Furby. But he used the pen name Tom Collins, and I won't go into the origins of that. His family, the Furby brothers, became a major engineering company in Victoria. Joseph Furby was sent to Fremantle where they wanted to start up a foundry. The foundry is still there, and they specialised in cast iron. But Joseph Furby died in 1912, still at work, and we at the Fellowship thought it would be a good idea to commemorate his name with his poetry prize, as I say, years ago. So now we come to the second prize winner, and poem Halfway Across the Desert, an interesting poem in the context of the talk of secession in Western Australia at the moment. I don't think that's what Karen's poem is about, so I ask you to welcome Karen Dixon to the microphone.
halfway across the desert. You found me lying in the lee of a dune, rented harem girl outfit stained and torn. In the west, a city thrust from cliff, hanging by chains, propped on rods. Faint dying voices crackled in wires, groaned in its pipes. Your face was wrapped round with faded red cloth, bound loose with skill and careless knees, so only eyes showed and band of skin bronzed by long walking in bright wind. Your eyes led mine to a place where rocks scraped up through sand, etched by blown grit and ancient sayings. We could have stayed, traced lips with curious fingers, or returned to break the city, salvage copper from its wires. Instead, we struck out, ranged east hand in hand, drawn into the ripening sun, choosing not to count steps, days, nights. When we are there, I will take off your cloth, you my transparent costume, so we see each other for the first time.
Okay, now, a couple of Holly Commanders, we've got 150 bucks each, worship by Max Webster, Christian the Cross by Paula Jones, and the Ballady Sonnets by Robert Leach. They won't be read today, because they're at the launch of Shane Corley's new book out in Japan at the moment, but hopefully Sean will be reading, Shane will be reading here in the near future and from that book. Now, the next reading is mine, a group of poems together in the form China landscapes. I've spent a bit of time in China over the last 20 or so years, and many different parts. And writing poems about different parts, I saw that some of the videos feature the weather or the seasons in China, some of which don't particularly correspond with us. So these short poems are all about different places, different seasons of the year in China. The first one takes the season of summer, and it's actually set in Guangdong province in Guangzhou. And Guangzhou is, of course, the new name, if you like, for Canton. And I was working there for 6 months. One of the things that struck me when I first went there in this sort of subtropical climate was the sound of the cicadas. I've noticed them in places like Sydney, but when you're there for 6 months and they're there in the trees all day, you do kind of register the sound, relentless sound of them. And I tried to think what they reminded me of. Finally, I got a metaphor, if you like. So here is the first of these. Summer, China landscape 1. Whining accordion in a slow South China afternoon, and the cicadas seethe and fry in the fat of jungle trees. The next one takes us to winter, this time the northeastern city of Shanghai. And in Shanghai, where I've also spent a considerable number of times teaching and researching and working there, in winter in Shanghai you do have snow, not every year, but they had it about 2 weeks ago. And about 2 years ago, I went to a big conference in Beijing, and afterwards went back to Shanghai, and I worked in a university by the river, Huangpu River in Shanghai. And this is the poem coming from the campus of that university, simply a winter. Weak sun by the river wall blotched the pavement beneath unleafed willows. The benches hosted other figures, also slumped against the chill wind from Shanghai. I had come here to contemplate, to know the way to gather energy for renewal. Ships and barges close by on the Huangpu clanked at work or hooted warnings. Graffiti on the wall's rough stone warned us to review the path ahead. and one songless bird fluttered futilely, escaping twigs and branches. But suddenly a child flew a bright kite. The last two poems take the other two seasons. First of all, spring, and this one I wrote after a visit to Inner Mongolia, which, as you know, is a grassland place a bit like lots of Western Australia. And I was reading some stories and histories about the rulers of Mongolia, and this poem kind of comes as a bit of a historical glimpse into the grasslands of Mongolia. Spring. Snow had long lifted from the grassland, and meadow flowers began their spring offensive. You took your son's hand and walked some way along dirt roads. He said, "Mother, the geese have returned from wintering south. Soon, Father and I will go hunting. You'll see what I've learned." Finally, autumn. I visited Hebei province, which is north of Beijing, in the autumn season. And one of the fruits I hate eating is persimmons. In fact, I don't eat them for that reason, but my wife loves them, and the sloppier the better. But one of the things you do see in Hebei province is the trees bare of leaves, but all hung with the golden persimmon fruits and other fruits of the stone variety, which are a product of that province. This little poem really starts in Hebei and actually finishes in Shanghai. Autumn. In Hebei's mountains, bare persimmon trees are laden with setting suns, amber in the mist, and the memory of you is heaped autumnally, like these warm fruits ready for sale, set before farmhouse after farmhouse. Not only are persimmons, but apples, incandescent mounds of plums, or saffron apricots, sallow pears. Meanwhile, firewood, enough to roar high in clay-fired chimneys, is stacked hectic as preparations for a feasting of a bride and groom in these autumn days. That will bring me back to you. Now we come to from the enders, and I'm going to ask first of all John Ryan, who's here with a PhD from USA, to read his poem Dispersion of Seed. John is a bit of a botanist as well as a literary man.
Dispersion of seed. A gap in the range along Chester Pass Road where the bullock grow on charcoal soils. We have come to see wild things anxious as furrowed buds, instead lying on the road verge. The sun-baked corpse of an old kill, wincing its last breath, grains sprawled about its guts, umber burlap bleached, tawny brown and riven, spilling maggots and stones in the difficult morning light. Houdini escapee from the road trains, persona non grata, at an ill-fated wedding where the wheat sullied the rice. Interloper, on an island of mallee, waddles sweeping the understory in a vile yellow peristalsis. Habitats become habits. All the shades of saffron and sinopia signify the storm of spring as we know it, or jilpa, as it has been called here. These worlds, sharp with edges that overlap and occlude, curl up one day like fern fronds, shrivel the next, dispersing.
Now to the final two readers of ours today. You heard a mention of the Rottnest Lighthouse in the previous poem. I don't know whether Dick Olsen's poem called From Lighthouse Hill reference to Rottnest or not, but you'll find out. Please welcome Dick to the microphone.
Hello, Glenn. It's
a response to a painting by Edward Hopper from Lighthouse Hill. From where we stand with our imperfect vision, there is some ideal here. On moments when these clouds separate and the headland is calm, and we can see for miles over what? There is no water here. We're told that the hillock is golden, and what lies beyond the mound cannot be seen. Yet there's a grim intent. Even on those days, the light and the house stare the same way. We have to imagine cliffs and the lightkeeper sleeping or not sleeping in that one-eyed room above the door. His wife going about her business elsewhere in that manic house, illuminated only by the periodic flash of his gaze. The last poem, there is a saying that the definition of a writer is someone who sell their own grandmother, but Julie Watts has written about both of hers, and so I invite her to read the commended poem from the Tom Collins Collection.
My grandmother's both lay back in North England. One set her aristocratic jaw against the male frame and talked about a story of that sound. The other hung the saviour with bleeding palms on the bed, stared her Anglican spouse to transgress the piety of the white sheets. My grandmothers both controlled their food. Anything juicy was given particular care. Peaches were pinned with silver forks, slit and sliced, and segments slipped furtively into half-open mouths. My grandmothers did not suck or bite. They did not relish or lick the sticky dip. My mother suffered for her succulence, and when I watch my daughter's elbows drip watermelon juice, I think of her.
I'd like to say thank you for the privilege of reading here on behalf of all the Tom Collins authors. I would say that we're now over the moon.
Hello. Thanks for permission to do this. Glenn, thank you. I'm Peter Biddy, and I didn't judge the Tom Collins Award this year. So thanks for the honour, Glenn. It's all right. That misunderstanding arose because we had a small ceremony at Tom Collins House to give the award, and saw these poets, some of them read there too. It was a very pleasant occasion, and I read the judge's report because he couldn't come, because he's a New South Wales poet, and that underlines the interesting point that the majority of winners in this award were West Australian. It wasn't sort of mates. It was a New South Wales poet. His name is Les Wicks. Les Quick. Les Quick. I'm sorry. Sorry, Les. Okay. That's all. Thank you.
So thank you, Peter Bibby. Thank you, Glenn, for that presentation, and thank you to all the people from the Fellowship of Australian Writers, Western Australia, and well done. Okay. Yeah, we're just making a slight change of program. We'll just finish up with one last open mic here, then I'll do a wind up, and then we'll go for our break. So if I could ask to the microphone now, please, Francis Lynn.
Within the ranks, the medals ring and gleam today the wearers. Ex-service men and women bring the lame in vans and wheelchairs. This is because the voices tuned in, the children sang out, and explained to us all what the war was about. But from the graves came a ghostlier shout, as the piper's refrain re-echoed our doubt. I'll be saying that again. The banners fringed and satin sashes all served to bear the names of those recorded in dispatches, suffering napalm's flames. Their spirit lingers, friends recall, courageous deeds of valour. Should they be listening in at all, no doubt their face with colour. The voices tuned in, the children sang out, and explained to us all what the war was about. But from the graves came a ghostlier shout, as the piper's refrain re-echoed our doubt. In Wee-Wet honoured Union Jack, and Borneo burned the creed, and Vietnam had Uncle Sam, whose honour called retreat. Crowns and stars clinked side by side, glasses line the tabletop, awaiting those who served with pride, like those my dad, bullets stopped. The voices tuned in as the children sang out, and explained to us all what the war was about. But from the graves came a ghostlier shout, as the piper's refrain re-echoed our doubt. A million rusty blades remain to mark the end of war, yet still the glory it retains restrains us asking, what's it for? But I must ask, and ask I will, and ask I will again, son, why boys your age their life's blood spill in arteries to depths ocean?
Thank you, Francis. Okay, just winding it up this first half. Tomorrow, the Fringe Gallery, which is a regular feature of the poetry scene here in Perth, is having their regular poetry reading at the Heathcote Gallery. Is everyone aware of that? Is the Heathcote Centre? I think it's in Applecross. It's Duncraig Road, Applecross. Anyway, it's going to be a good gig. They've got some visual art in the gallery there, and they're featuring one of our great poets, regular. He's disappeared from the room now, but it's Marcus, the Scrutineer's Blodge, along with Paul Harrison, down at the Fringe there tomorrow. There's the second jukebox night. Is next Friday night, 30th of April, at the Claremont Hotel, which will be featuring once again some of the Perth Poetry Club regulars. Okay. Voice Box, 7 p.m. first Thursday at La Tropicana down at Fremantle. Okay. And also upcoming, you were invited to Love Poetry, Hate Racism, an evening of poetry performance. When? It's Sunday the 2nd of May at 6:30 p.m. the Ethnic Communities Council Hall, 20 View Street in North Perth. It's featuring Nandi Chiana, Smith, Pierce, excuse me for any mispronunciation, this was just presented, handwritten last week, and Stian Hardart and Lily Chan, and much more, bringing poetry, songs and friends. Okay, yeah, and we've also got, like I've already mentioned, Ron Oakley's book launch, 2 p.m. to 16th of May. He's got flyers here. I'll speak to the man himself, Ron Oakley. Yes, and yeah, all our regular staff give according to your means. It costs us basically $150 to run this gig because we get professional sound from band. So whatever you can afford, $10, $8, $5. We don't want to exclude anyone. If it's nothing, then you're welcome to stay, listen, watch or read. Yeah, and if you want to get on the Perth Poetry Club, we do have a sign-up list there, so you can get emails or texts from Janet as soon as she gets her head out of the clouds from the festival that she's at the moment. And yeah, that's basically it. I think, yeah, we've got Perth Poetry Club flyers as well, so I'll just finish up with a little bit of something. Oh, and we've got here next week, we've got Kay Cairns. She's coming along with her Irish voice. And we have Martha's. They're coming along with their hip-hop sounds. Okay, something new for me. I changed my mind. Did you see that? It's called but don't want to be educated. I can read and write and I can punch a calculator, but to save myself, I learned to till and sow and reap and to hunt and to slaughter, but to save myself, I can cook and clean and wash and wipe and draw water, but to save myself, if need be, I can sew and darn and spin and wax and tell a yarn, but to save myself, just want to work and learn and commune and brainstorm with intelligent, educated, compassionate counterparts and people, but only just to save myself. Thank you. See you in the second half.
I'm afraid.
Oh, help yourself, and there's a dip there too.
Nah, it's alright. Take it.
Harry, whatever it is, it's alright.
I'm cool.
Can you turn it off, please?
Turn it off.
Yeah, box it off. Hang on, let me show you the screen. Hang on a minute, it's alright. I can always cut that bit out. Actually, we'll look at this lot. Okay. Greasy hands? Yeah. Okay, well I need that seat. Can you vacate the seat? I say not just move, Michael, thank you. I was.